Hello, this is Tanya Roy, and here I am going to introduce a branch of philosophy of mind. Firstly, what are the important questions? These are what is psychology and whether psychology is a science or not, and if yes, then what kind of science it is. Another question is what are the applications of psychology? Next is what is psychology? According to C.T. Morgan, psychology is the science of human and animal behavior. It includes the application of these science to human problems. So there are three basic problems. One is whether psychology is a science or not, and whether behavior is connected with psychology, and what is the application of psychology. Now let's explain whether psychology is science or not. As a science, psychology is systematic because experiments and measurements are essential. And psychology do experiments, make observations, they obtain data. So we can easily call it a science. But the question is what kind of science it is. It is not a normative science, but it is a positive science that only discusses and analyzes mental events, and it does not focus on the issues of right, wrong, ought to do or not to do, ought not to do. Sorry. And psychology makes principles and analyzes them and make theories. So it is a descriptive science as well as theoretical. Now the question is whether psychology can be called as a natural science or not. There are so many philosophers are accepted that psychology is a natural science. Stout, McDowell's, they do not consider that psychology is a natural science because according to them psychology discusses with mind or mental states which are not situated in nature as physical objects. So natural sciences use physical measurements, scales like length, temperature, time, and so on. However, the measurement is psychological. Experiment is more difficult because psychologists have not what kind of physical scales. Psychologists do not use these physical scales. Psychology experiments in psychology, psychologist experiments with the personal experience, but natural science do not use this personal experience. Natural science is always their concern the objective in character. On the other hand, psychology is subjective. Actually, psychology is focused on subjects, but natural science focused on objects which are situated in the world. On the other hand, William James Watson, they accept that psychology is a natural science because they think that like other natural sciences, psychology also accepts uniformity of nature and law of causations. They argue that mind is also part of nature like temperature, light, etc. and it is also not created by human being. The nature of mind is natural. Secondly, we know about the existence of mind and different mental states by observations of human behavior. And human behavior is nothing but a matter of physical body. So, it is objective in some way. For example, we can count the number of time a person behaves one way in one situations and another way in another situations, or we can measure the time taken to make a response in one situation or another. Next, there is it's also important that there are different viewpoints of psychology, that some psychologists defines that the science it is a science which studies mind and state of consciousness. On the other hand, some accepts that the science of human and animal behavior. In the history of psychology, there are many psychologists argue on the issues that what should be studied in psychology. But more or less all of the scientists and philosophers accepts that it is a science of behavior. There are so many schools of psychology. If we are focusing on we are studying history, we will find that ideas about behavior and mind is Western culture began with the Greek philosophers. Psychology as a separate area of study split away from philosophy over 100 years ago, and it is a success of the use of experimental method in study of mind and behavior. In 1879, the first psychological laboratory was established at the University of Leipzig by the German philosopher and psychologist by Wilhelm Wundt. After that, there are so many schools built, like structuralism, Gestalt psychology, functionalism, behaviorism, and psychoanalysis. There are, as we have already known, he is a very famous Freud is a very famous psychologist who introduced the method psychoanalysis. We are know, and there are so many applications of psychology. Not like that we are just studying the psychology in schools or college. Not like that. There are different applications of psychology, and on the basis of the applications, we called differently different sections in a different sections, like clinical psychology, counseling psychology, schools and educational psychology, experimental psychology, industrial psychology, social psychology, developmental psychology, community psychology, and so on. So all these psychological schools and all the psychological applications we will be discussed later. And this is my end of my class. So thank you.